And good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Mary Ann Dickinson. I'm the President and CEO of the Alliance for Water Efficiency, and we want to welcome you to today's webinar, our Innovations in Efficiency webinar. The title of it is Accessing the Power of the Cloud to Drive Outdoor Water Savings. And we have some great speakers to talk with you about that today. As many of you know who are veterans of our webinars, we generally make our webinars 60 minutes in length, but we leave plenty of time for you to ask questions by typing them in. If you're hearing my voice, you already have figured out the audio. It's either through your telephone with a separate telephone number that came with your GoToWebinar instructions, or you can plug in to your computer, microphone, and speakers. Both work. And as I mentioned a little earlier, we do mute the webinar phone line during the presentation because we are recording it, and it does tend to make a clean recording that you can listen to later. But we do want you to participate, and questions can be typed in throughout the webinar and will be answered at the end by all of the speakers. So we really do want to encourage you to participate. So before I start with the webinar title, just want to give you a little bit more instruction about how you access the screen to type your questions. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, there should be an orange rectangle with a white arrow. If you click on that, it'll open up a dialog box, and you'll see there will be a place to type in your questions that will go to Liam, who is our webinar master today, and he will then accumulate the questions and we'll read them in the order that they were received. So that's the way you actually access the webinar to type in your questions. Okay, so that said, let's talk about outdoor water efficiency. And the focus on outdoor water efficiency is one that the Alliance for Water Efficiency has undertaken as a strategic objective in the past several years. And our vision that we put in our strategic plan was that by 2030, homeowners and businesses would all be smart water users. They'd be empowered by an awareness of the value of water. They would be benefiting by real-time information that keeps them informed, and by technologies that help them save water both indoors and outdoors. And so today's webinar theme fits in perfectly with that long-term strategic vision. And we've made great strides in indoor water efficiency over the years. It is the decades that we've spent doing plumbing codes and standards and efficiency standards for appliances have really brought down indoor water use quite substantially. But outdoor water use is still poorly understood. It's ripe for innovation, like we're going to talk about today, and it can welcome additional improvement at the consumer, landscape contractor, and landscaper designer levels. And so we're committed as an organization to help that and to promote efficient and sustainable use of water in the outdoor sector. And we firmly believe in smart management, which we think means reducing wasted water on all landscape types by improving the irrigation efficiency of in-ground systems, which are the prevalent way many consumers now are irrigating their landscapes, whether they're in arid areas or whether they're in rain wet areas. In-ground irrigation systems are becoming the norm, and they're certainly a feature of all new construction. So efficiency in those systems is a primary goal. So when we decided in our last strategic plan to focus on the outdoor sector, one of the first tasks we undertook was to take a look at where research had been done that documented savings and documented costs for achieving those savings. And we compiled all of the research that we found in a search. We were assisted by the academic community in putting this together. And we published a report. We called it our Phase 1 report, Outdoor Water Savings Research Initiative. And what this initiative did was it identified gaps in that research where we needed more information about particular types of outdoor water efficiency programs so that we could give advice to our water utility members as to what types of programs would be best to invest in. So in the phase 2 of our project, we actually are conducting 3 studies that will produce information, actionable information on water savings at the consumer level. And these 3 areas were selected from the GAPS list by a large panel of our members, outdoor water efficiency experts, who identified that there were 3 areas that really needed some research. One was landscape transformation and what causes consumers to decide to make changes in their landscape. What are those attitudinal differences, and how does that affect savings? Are we getting the savings estimates from these programs that we expected? A second study is, what about drought restrictions? How do they impact water savings potential, and are drought restrictions enough to motivate consumer behavior? What has been our experience with drought restrictions to date? Both of these study areas had not received much in the way of research, and Alliance decided to undertake both of those. A third study was proposed to us by one of our members, and it looks at the issue of peak reduction and whether a combination of smart technology tools, smart meters, together with smart controllers, can manage peak reduction and help a utility keep its peaks lower and manage the irrigation on landscapes that are at the customer level. So those 3 studies are underway. The peak reduction study is nearly complete. We're just finalizing the report now. But the landscape transformation and impact of drought restriction studies will continue for at least another year to year and a half. But watch for information about those studies as we go forward with the research, and we'll make that available, of course, to all of you AWE members. So the purpose of this particular webinar is it's part of our Innovations and Efficiency Showcase series, where we showcase our AWE members and how they innovate in water efficiency settings. And so it highlights the work that they are doing, highlights new trends, emerging technologies, and their own innovative approaches that we believe are changing the field of water management. And we're featuring 2 of those members today. And much like what we see in the indoor sector, the irrigation industry is rapidly evolving. The focus is now on data and user access in a real-time information basis, and that kind of information is only going to help improve landscape water efficiency. New technologies are emerging. It's leveraging cloud-based platforms, and those platforms give end users more control over their water use and help them to achieve savings that are financially beneficial to the customer as well as to the utility. And we're very proud of our AWE business members that are at the forefront of this technology development, and that's what we would like to showcase for you today. In addition to the 2 speakers today, we have a number of our partners that work with us on outdoor water efficiency. You see logos for a lot of them here. If you are not a member of our network right now and you want to be part of this irrigation network, please get in touch with us. We would love to welcome you into the AWE network and family. So with all that said, today's speakers are Luke Timmons, Product Manager from Rainbird Corporation, and Brian Ewing, Vice President of Sales, and Clay Kraus, Director of Market Development at Ratio. And we're very pleased that they are both with us today to talk to you about their programs. And we'll start first with Luke Timmons, and I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us on. You can go ahead and click off to the first slide. We're going to be regional specific here, not because California is most important, but because that's what's recently made the news. At least from what I can tell, nationwide, California was a bit of a focus over the last couple of years. So just wanted to lead off by taking a look at the water use in California. The amount of rain that falls, and I'm picking up an echo. I'm not sure if anybody else is, but if somebody's unmuted, go ahead and mute. That would be great. So much of the water that falls that's used is used for agriculture, of course, growing food. And a lot of times we don't tend to think about this in our landscape field, but Without water approved for urban use, which here shows as 11%, we would cease to exist. So the burden is on Rainbird, on Ratio, and others to make sure that we get the message out as well, not just to keep ourselves in business, but because our mission is to conserve water and be sustainable, good stewards, etc. It's life's most necessary resource, obviously, and we don't want that to go away for our landscape field. You can move forward to the next slide. So last year was probably the first time in a long time, maybe ever, where a place like California actually promoted brown grass. Even smart water users were frowned upon if their turf looked too good, because they must be wasting water. This was good in that it raised awareness. It became cool to do something sustainable or to rip your turf out. Regulatory requirements, things like no more turf in the medians at all in the entire state of California, for example. And that is just one example of where part of our industry can be legislated and all of a sudden something goes away. So turf browns out on medians, gets ripped out and replaced, or even just rock gets put over. And people start to see this and they start to realize, boy, I like looking at grass, right? And so this was good in that it raised awareness. Next slide. These pictures did much to raise awareness as well. Pictures speak louder than words. And when people start thinking and acknowledging that there's no possible way we can fill up a Lake Shasta, we can't fill up Lake Oroville, etc., it starts to make a bigger impact than just a regulatory requirement of, hey, here's an idea, turn off the water while you're brushing your teeth, for example. And that's important, and we should all do it. But when you start seeing these kinds of pictures showing this amount of water need, it really did a good job to put our message forward that water is important and not just going to be there forever. Next slide. At the risk of focusing just on California, it's just by way of an example, but it's really a worldwide problem. Rainbird's in over 130 countries. We've had and seen drought in all types of various locations throughout the world. And these technologies, we're focused on in the U.S. primarily in our thinking, but these can be adapted and have been adapted all around the world. Next slide. So technology. iPhones, I'm on a Bluetooth, we have all these nice gadgets and gizmos that do great things for us, but why is our industry characterized by these images? In a former life, I worked for a large landscape company, and this was common. People would take pictures, people would send videos. Why is this always happening? Next slide. The bottom line is for a lot of people, especially in the commercial sector, they don't see the irrigation on. Now, those were daylight images, but oftentimes all people notice is the green grass, the pretty flowers, and the nice trees. And that's good, but it's what's underground that is either working or not working. And while the industry is adapted to a lot of these tools that we see here, irrigation has, and Marianne even said, kind of gotten traditionally overlooked. Next slide. So what about water management? It's been around for a really long time. Rainbird came out with the first system in the 70s, primarily for golf, and then adapted it to commercial applications. But take a look at the investment that was required at the time, that IBM computer. Now, I'm not sure what kind of reporting that gentleman's looking at, but I'm sure it was state-of-the-art for its time. Next slide. Moving forward a decade or two, we get into systems that run on a familiar Windows-based PC, for example. This happens to be a golf system. It's a great tool for water management that we've had for a long time. Next slide. Sophisticated components like weather stations, solar panels, 5-foot-long soil moisture probe you see there in the center for agricultural applications. All these devices have been around for quite some time. Next slide. Now, we've continued to make those products. Obviously, there's been demand for them, or we wouldn't have been in business and able to continue making them. But the difference today is you can look at all of this on your phone and on your iPad. So we've all seen images of the folks at the beach holding the cartoon of the folks at the beach holding their cell phone up and getting a tan line on their chest in the shape of their cell phone. You know, people's faces are buried in their phones. The fact of the matter is if we can't access something on our phone or on our tablet, oftentimes we don't put any focus on it. So the good news about today is being able to adapt these pieces of hardware and make them accessible through the cloud now gives us an opportunity for these to be used en masse and not just the leaders of the industry anymore. Next slide. So Rainbird's approach, we've long had controllers in the marketplace that are very familiar to users, and so it was incumbent upon us to make sure that we keep the controller the same, but then add a piece of technology to it, namely a way to access that controller through the cloud. So whatever mobile device you have that's connected, for these big commercial controllers that we have for landscape turf applications, that cartridge down there at the bottom pops into the controller, and now you can access that controller remotely. Next slide. Something unique is we've had cloud-based technology in the irrigation market for over 15 years, actually. And when I say we, I don't mean Rainbird, I mean just we collectively. The options have been out there. And people have gotten tired of fees. They start to lose their appetite for paying that annual fee because they are forgetting how much water they're saving, or they're forgetting how convenient it is to have the reporting or other benefits from a system. Something that's pretty cool that Rainbird can do is if you've got a big homeowners association or a city with a lot of controllers on a median or boulevard type situation, you can go cloud-based to that first controller and then in the field connect additional controllers either with cable, which is not as common these days, but 900 megahertz radio works really well. And so now you've got a network of controllers that are all going through one that we call a server, and that way it can reduce or even eliminate fees depending on if you've got Ethernet or Wi-Fi capability. So these types of technologies make using the cloud and getting a lot of controllers and systems on the cloud with not a lot of ongoing cost. Next slide. This has also hit our ag division, and I want to take a second to talk about water savings from maybe a typical customer's viewpoint. Unfortunately, not everyone cares so much about saving water. We wish they did, but, and Ratio and we all know this, we've got to tap into other ways to get our products into the hands of the customer, because saving water, unfortunately, isn't oftentimes a motivating factor on its own. So convenience in agriculture, for example, every drop of water that's put down that's not necessary dilutes their herbicide, pesticide, and other applications, chemicals, etc. That is big time money loss, and then obviously it can affect the yields of the crops themselves. So whatever we can tap into in terms of the customer's pain point or customer's motivation, that's what we want to do. And we'll take the benefit of the water savings regardless of what kind of priority it is for them. Next slide. Building management systems. This is another one. Oftentimes a city or entity will have building management systems, and every single thing they have in the city is connected except for the irrigation. And so this is an opportunity that Rainbird will be jumping into here in the next few months. Next slide. So convenience, real briefly. We don't need to read everything on the screen, but two-wire. For those of you that have done two-wire, you probably have experienced the pains of it, and hopefully you've experienced the marvelous convenience of it as well. Being cloud connected, remote access, makes it a lot more convenient to do troubleshooting. Next slide. Being able to actually see what's happening real time, actual flow in this case, the Big Brother type concept where you can see exactly what happened last night or a week ago, a month ago. Next slide. Folks that have a lot of controllers out there, as many rain sensors as you have, if you have a rain event, there should be the same number of rain sensor activations in the report log. Next slide. Convenience, again, we'll just follow the little white click here and turn off a bunch of controllers all at once. Oftentimes in commercial applications, these controllers can be in locked closets and take an insane amount of time for a human being to go around and shut these off, right? But in that example, we just quickly turned off an entire HOA. Meaningful reporting, what do we mean by that? Visual, graphical, a way for people to look and see, in this case, hey, what should have happened, which is the gray shaded area, and then a blue overlay of what did happen, and being able to click anywhere in that graph and see exactly what was on or off. Next slide. This slide, again, very typical of most contractors that are trying to get into smart controllers. That is, they don't want the controller to make any decision apart from their influence. In this case, the controller was put into an alarm-only mode. The customer said, hey, this is good, I'll watch it, but I don't want this controller shutting anything off automatically. And we won't belabor all the tiny details, but the blue line represents what actually happened. The gray down below represents what should have happened. And all we are really looking at in this example is a 24-hour period where the customer should have put down 75,000 gallons of water. This is a big commercial site, but instead you'll see the red circle, 150,000 gallons of water was put down, and that's because the customer did not want the controller to take any automatic action. Now, we were able to pull this report, click and find out, hey, that station number 52 with 70 gallons a minute was stuck open for who knows how long it was going on before this 24-hour period. But just another example of tools that a customer can use. Now, the customer switched the controller, thankfully, to an automatic shutdown mode and started getting full benefits of the system. Next slide. So water savings. A lot of people push guarantees. It's very difficult to guarantee water savings of a particular number, but we routinely see more than 50% water saved on the typical site. If someone's managing very well, you know, it's not going to be 71%, but virtually everyone can save water versus what they would have put down if they adapt to this technology and use it even in a limited fashion. Next slide. Rainbird has been admittedly a little bit slow compared to some startups and some other companies that have jumped into the smaller controller world, or what we kind of refer to as residential controllers maybe. And the demand has gotten so high that that Rainbird, Hunter, Toro, a lot of the bigger names that have been around for a long time have thankfully, due to competitors like Ratio and others, said, hey, we need to get this into the hands of individual homeowners, small customers, without the need for large capital expenses. So again, sticking with the Rainbird trend, you'll see the circled little what we call a link Wi-Fi stick. But again, the ESP-ME controller that everyone is familiar with, people get to just pop this link stick right into the back of the controller, and they maintain the look and feel of their controller while obviously picking up the ability to use their phone as well. So what about the future? I mentioned the competition. I love competition. It pushes everyone to do better. There's a lot of competitors in the controller space because, quite frankly, it's not as much of a challenge to make a controller, let's say, versus a pop-up sprinkler that requires millions of dollars of factory equipment, et cetera. And that's good for the control systems arena because that means people can jump in and push each other to do better. And I think we've all experienced that on the manufacturing side. Next slide. So that is what we have on the Rainbird side for today's short webinar. Rainbird's mission is the intelligent use of water. That may be familiar. If it touches water, Rainbird wants to be involved with it. And my contact information is here for anybody that wants to take that down. My last name actually has, I guess I can't spell my own name.
It's Timmons.
Timmons
No,
with a T.
we did that. That's our mistake. I'm sorry, Luke.
No worries.
We'll fix it.
I get called Tim all the time.
Sorry about that.
No, but that wraps it up for the Rainbird side, and I'm curious to see what we've got next.
Okay, thank you so much, Luke. And if you have questions for Luke, hope you're typing them into the dialog box. We'll address them as soon as we finish with our next set of speakers, and we'll be opening it up for questions at that time. Again, thank you very much, Luke, for your presentation. So our next set of speakers is from Ratio. We're going to hear from Brian Ewing, Vice President of Sales, and Clay Kraus, Director of Market Development. So take it away, guys.
Hey, thank you very, very much for having us, and hats off to Rainbird. That was a great presentation, so well done. You know, when Clay and I jump into this, we're going to certainly speak to a very young company, a very exciting company called Ratio that kind of kick-started this, you know, automation from your phone story back in 2014. So we're a little different than some of the traditional players in the space, and we take a bit of a different approach along the way. We'll tell you a little bit about our company this morning. We'll tell you a little bit why we think that what is happening in the space, which is very exciting, really is going to have massive improvement for the overall water space. I don't think we need to get into great detail here. We know we've got a national problem, we got a global problem, and we believe that technology and software are going to be key to the answers of the future, and how we go about continuing to maximize this wonderful natural resource that we have. When you think about Ratio, we'll start here, and there's about 2 or 3 things that we think are important. Many of you probably, and I'm seeing there's probably about 51 of you, are either listening to me right now or maybe even have your mobile device in your hand, checking your email or checking if your sports team won last night, maybe doing any number of things around that. And what we think is really exciting for this industry and for the future is that customers are getting connected. We're connected to things differently than we ever have been, and I use examples, you know, like, you know, fantasy football, how I connect with my fantasy football team in the fall, to how I connect with my garage doors. I have 2 young kids that go to the bus every morning. I leave about 10 minutes before they walk out, and I always worry about them closing or opening the garage doors, and I can do that all now from my device. And what we're finding today is people are so connected to their mobile devices. Many of you might think that's actually pretty scary, actually, how much time we do spend on it. But it does give us an amazing opportunity to connect with consumers. And we do know that the Ratio consumer is connected, and we see a lot of benefits from that. So we'll talk more about that. Next slide, please. We certainly benefit from the smart home. And smart home started back in 2012 with Nest, which is a Google company today, a really great partner of ours, who launched the very first smart Wi-Fi enabled thermostat. Many of you may even have that already. But since Nest, and we kind of call them, at least in our office, kind of the start of the whole home automation trend kind of started there, we have seen amazing growth in the smart home space. I've got a couple facts up there. Only about 6% of the U.S. population has smart home in there today. We see that growing up to almost 20% by 2020. There's certainly a heavy desire in certain categories to get involved. One of those is around resource management. Nest certainly started that with being able to save electricity around your AC and furnace, but we're seeing water quickly rising to the top of what people believe can be really affected by good technology. And so we certainly have enjoyed that, and I think the industry will continue to enjoy that as consumers get more engaged in home automation. This past year, we think it's been kind of the secondary push around home automation is the advent of voice. If you think back to Christmas 2016, one of the most or one of the most gifted items during the holiday season was an Amazon Echo. And these are the devices I see Amazon as well as now Google Home advertise these at a very rapid rate. And you'll see commercials that say, Alexa, turn on sprinkler system, or Google, turn off lights. And these are now becoming very similar to the American home and are now starting to help manage many complex devices in and around the home. And we are really excited about that. Just to give you a quick fact, we believe there's going to be, and we've seen this in a Fortune article this year, just published right after Christmas, there's going to be close to 37 million voice-activated devices in homes in the U.S. by the end of the year. Our numbers will tell you there's only, and this could be debated, but about 20 million single-family detached homes that have irrigation. So there's going to be a great overlap between how technology is in the home and irrigation as we move forward. We think that's a fantastic and exciting place for the industry to work on. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so guys, this is Clay Krause here. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of water conservation and the way that drove the creation of the company. So, you know, in speaking with our agency partners and speaking with some of our customers who have had, you know, what we refer to kind of as, you know, more traditional or dumb sprinkler controllers in the past, we know that one of the difficulties they face is really kind of engaging with that controller, understanding how schedules work, understanding how to make seasonal changes. And something that we commonly hear from agencies is that, you know, it's a miracle if they can get that homeowner to make an adjustment 2 or 3 times a year, let's say on the shoulders of the season with that controller. Despite that, this is really the one piece of technology or the one kind of water-using device in the home that dictates the use of as much water as it does. And we're talking anywhere from 40%, you know, in Colorado to as high as 70% in inland Southern California. So this one device controls so much outdoor water use, especially residentially, and yet people really don't know how to interact or engage with that controller. And, you know, I'm sure we've all heard the statistic a lot. The EPA cites, you know, 50% of irrigation water being lost because of inefficient devices or inefficient application methods. And from what we found, that really is true. That's a product of people's misunderstanding of these devices. So with that in mind, kind of with that smart home piece, as well as this need for water conservation and all that's happened with the drought in California and Colorado and Texas and throughout the United States, we saw a need for a change. So next slide, please.
So a little history on Rachio, and there's quite a few amazing companies, and I will once again say Rainbird has been just a phenomenal manufacturer in this space for many, many years. We certainly are the new guy here at Rachio. We were founded in 2012, so I always think I can still kind of count how long we've been around on one hand, which is both exciting as well as just showcases how new we are in the space. But since 2012, we've had a tremendous amount of success. Just to give you a sense, we are out of Colorado, where Clay and I are today in Denver, Colorado, downtown Denver. It's been a fabulous place to start the company, be part of the company, but also it makes a lot of sense because water is such a big issue here. And really, when we started, our founders, Chris and Franz, started the company because they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to create technology that could really solve a big problem. And I think we could all identify, no matter how long you've been in this space, the, you know, walking your dog or driving down the street and seeing sprinkler heads pop up after a rain. And in 2012, we were going through that exact deal here, a major drought in Denver. And Chris and Franz said, you know what, that's a problem we're solving. And certainly as they got into it, they recognized it was a major problem that we have to solve. So we started in 2012. We got our first product into the market in 2014, and so we're just at 3 years now with product in the market. We have gone through a couple of different generations of controllers already. We're in our Gen 2 product, which launched last year, March 2016, and it constantly and consistently is the highest rated and reviewed controller, both in the residential space, sold both within consumer and pro markets. So we're very excited about how the energy of the product has been picked up. You would be able to find our product at places for a consumer to go, like an Amazon or a Home Depot. But you would also find it, and professionals are able to find it, in places like Ewing Irrigation and Supply, Site One Landscape, and we've also been working within the municipality water space to bring this solution to bear there. Also, just as a side note, we do make everything in Colorado. So not only are we founded here, but we make our products here as well. Next slide, please. So just real quickly on the controller, and the reason I'm bringing this up, and because we all know controllers, we probably wired up 1,000 of them with this audience. I know that you have wired up a lot. But the point of the matter is that we've created both hardware and software that's very easy for the homeowner to engage with. The install, we're very residential focused, so we really attack a yard that's 16 zones or less. And so what you see there is a 16-zone controller. Looks like we probably have wired up maybe about 6 to 7 zones. On the left-hand side, you'll see pump master valve and some rain sensor inputs as well as flow sensor inputs at the top. We do have onboard control to allow for a homeowner or a professional, somebody from the municipality, to be able to test and run zones right from the box. But more importantly, we have developed software, and we'll talk about that in a second, that makes it very easy within the confines of your mobile device to program. We're an ET-based controller, so we do focus in on the very simple but important pieces of ET: crop type, sun exposure, nozzle type, soil, as well as slope. And we put all of those pieces in the software, and we run the consumers through it in a very personal, easy way. And we allow them now, instead of running back and forth to the box in kind of that old traditional way, you're now engaging with your mobile device, as I mentioned earlier, such a big part of our story. And we're getting customers and homeowners, and a lot of them very quickly, to engage in outdoor irrigation, something they've been very scared about and certainly have probably dismissed as something they even want to get engaged with based upon kind of the complexity of historical controllers, and now creating something that's very easy, intuitive, and most importantly, exciting to work with. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so what I mentioned when we were talking a little bit about just kind of homeowners' reluctance or their difficulty engaging with these devices in the past, and Brian's spoken to this a little bit, we've really focused on making the creation of schedules and the configuration of the controller as easy as possible. With that, we're bringing them through this process about telling us a little bit about their zones, what's growing there, and providing them the support that they need via support articles, in-app support that helps them to properly set it up. Now, once we have all of those data, all of those input data, what we're doing is we're asking them to create a schedule that best kind of fits their restrictions and or needs. So we have kind of 2 different schedule categories, as I call them. The first one is our fixed category, and what that allows is for people to set a schedule that waters specific days of the week or an interval of their choosing, and then selecting those specific days that they can water. Let's say that they do face restrictions. We will actually propose watering times for them based on individual zone characteristics. Now, the second category is what we call our flexible schedules, and what those do is those are really taking a look at real-time ET and making adjustments to watering interval instead of duration throughout the course of the year. So with both, again, we're focused on making seasonal adjustments, but at the same time kind of making real-time adjustments, looking for things like precipitation events, rain events, if it's going to be freezing, if we should skip because there's risk of a in-ground burst, anything of that nature. Again, just trying to make it easy to understand, predictable, and really engage the homeowner around how this device is applying water to their yard. Next slide, please. So with that, and kind of with this this functionality we've developed, we've received both our SWOT and our EPA testing. In both of those tests, we achieved irrigation efficiency of around 100%. So that's taking a look at runoff, whether irrigation is adequate based on ET for any given crop type, soil type, things like that. And we achieved that in all zones but one across both of these tests. So we know that the controller is very accurate in determining how much water needs to be applied to the yard. And another thing that we're doing is, we're beginning to think about flow, and our controller does allow for flow sensors to be attached to it. With that, we're hoping to provide our users a better understanding of how much water is being used in the yard. This is something I've seen in Southern California and Colorado, but people don't realize how much water is being applied to their yard. As part of just kind of that disconnection or that disengagement with this device. People think that showers or faucets are really areas where a lot of efficiency can be realized, whereas this irrigation controller dictates so much of the residential water use. Next slide, please.
One of the things that Rachio has enjoyed, and it is really part of our DNA, is the ability to bring simplicity to something that's very complicated. And I know that everybody on this phone understands that. Water efficiency is understood. It's complex. It's mathematical. A lot of different inputs. And what Rachio has done and will continue to do, it's just part of our promise to the industry, is to bring both simplicity and a user experience to the table that engages the consumer. Average users open our app 70 times a year. Now think about that for a second. If you could get 70% of your user base doing anything and engaging, it's breakthrough things can start to happen. And with that, we think that breakthrough water savings is not only happening currently with Rachio, but really I think the future is very bright for the industry when we start bringing consumers into the fold and having them be active in this story. Last year we did over 25 major software updates. We've done that since we started, and the important piece about this is that no longer is the controller the piece that is driving the software, and this whole webinar is about cloud-based and what does that do. And just real simply for us is that we keep all of the really the working pieces of the controller up in the cloud. We use a very secure story where we lead in security. We know that's a big piece, but we put everything in the cloud. So we put your schedules in the cloud. We put all of the software in the cloud. And so when a software update comes out, and we've got some amazing things coming up this year for both the homeowner and the pro, is that all of that gets delivered free of charge. And so when we find new ways to bring water efficiency to the consumer, there's not a necessity for anybody to go back out and purchase a new piece of hardware. All of that gets updated automatically, no different than your CNN app updating on your phone or whatever your favorite piece of software. So we're excited about that, and we think that's certainly going to continue to make the homeowners really engaged in this. Next slide, please. The other one that I will tell you, and all of you have probably a different view or lens to home automation. But home automation, as I mentioned earlier, is a big driver. And what Rachio has done and has done since the beginning in 2014 is we have partnered with some of the best and biggest technology providers in the space. And so what you'll see here is kind of a list of some of the companies that we have worked with and we will continue to work with. Some of those are the biggest technology companies in the space today. Amazon Alexa, who does Echo, Google Home, which certainly we all understand the power of Google in our lives, and our product now is connected with Google Assistant. You'll find Nest in there, but you'll also find a lot of other exciting products in there. Smart Things by Samsung, Alarm.com at the bottom. And what's exciting about all of these, and what we think is exciting to the water industry, is the ability to connect with consumers when they have other home automation products in their home. And nothing like going, hey, it works with this product. And when you say that to a consumer, it works with Amazon Echo or it works with Nest, our ability then to get them engaged in our product is a multiplier effect. And as Clay mentioned earlier, we know we have the irrigation piece down. It's all about consumer engagement and getting them engaged in the product. Next slide, please. We're a proven piece. As I mentioned, we've been out since 2014. So if you look at any ratings reviews or are curious about our product, you'll find 4.9 out of 5 stars rating reviews with thousands and thousands of consumer reviews. Next slide, please.
Yes, before we close out today, I just want to give you guys a little bit of understanding of kind of what we're doing in the agency space. And we're a software company. We come from B2B software backgrounds, from hardware backgrounds, very kind of mixed demographic within our office. And with that comes a kind of scientific aspect or a research-based aspect to a lot of what we do. So we're constantly working with our partners to kind of understand what challenges exist in the industry and build solutions to match those. One of the first really pilots that we got engaged with, and one that we've been tremendously excited about, is one that we've worked with the Alliance on, as well as Peter Mayer of Water DM. And what that's doing, to Mary Ann's discussion earlier, is actually exploring the viability of peak water demand reduction through kind of remote control of these systems. So essentially, we've just deployed some controllers en masse in a specific service area, and we're understanding what these controllers can do to actually reduce peak use, particularly during hot times of year when people are running their irrigation without adversely affecting their landscape or their perception of how water is being applied. Another one that we're working on right now is with the Stanford Graduate School of Business, a professor there named Wesley Hartman, as well as the California Data Collaborative, a group many of you may be familiar with. And that research is really focused on kind of understanding smart controller subsidies holistically. How we market these products. We're actually including Facebook on this study. The savings realized from these products, elasticity, actually price elasticity and kind of subsidy amounts. And again, really kind of looking at this as a comprehensive problem. And then finally, we're working with the City of Plano, as well as a few other individual municipalities to understand just how this technology changes the way people are engaging with their controller, in contrast with kind of a more traditional knobs and dials controller. Next slide, please.
And that's it from Raccio. So we appreciate it. We'll turn it back over to the home team there in Chicago, and we'll allow for some Q&A. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And here is a slide that has both Brian and Clay's contact information if you're interested in getting in touch with them later. So at this point, I think we're ready to see your questions. We're very happy you hung with us today on our webinar, and what questions you have, please type them in. And while you're doing that, let me just summarize that a PDF of the presentation, which of course with Luke's name corrected, will be posted as well as a link for the recorded webinar, and that'll be available in a few days. Liam will send out an email about that. If you have additional questions after the webinar, you can send them to us and we'll forward them to the speakers, or you can email them directly. And just to let you know, we have a number of webinars coming up that we want you to be aware of. We're going to do a webinar on May 2nd on commercial kitchens, water use efficiency. We have a guide that we have just published for AWE members, and we'd love to show you what's in that guide. On May 23rd, we will have an exemplary programs webinar, which is where we feature, just like we do innovations and efficiency, we feature our business members. The exemplary programs webinar features a lot of our utility members and the innovative programs that they're doing. So we will hear from one particular utility, DC Water, on what they're doing there. On June 7th, we'll do a webinar on NetBlue, which is a project we're launching in a couple of weeks. It's our water neutral development ordinance. That is a toolkit package that you'll have access to, and this webinar will walk you through it. And then finally on June 20th, we will do a joint webinar with EPA and IA, the Irrigation Association, on water-sensitive SWAT. And so those are 4 webinars not to miss in the future. So Liam, what do we have in terms of questions?
Yeah, we have a few questions, and maybe some more will come in. So first off, for Raccio, if your Wi-Fi gets disconnected, will the controller automatically reconnect? And also, where is the weather data coming from? I've noticed many wireless controllers utilize airport weather stations, but I live in a microclimate that even though the airport is no more than 10 miles away, the weather can be 10 degrees cooler than the airport.
Yeah, so I'm happy to take both of these. This is Clay Krause from Raccio. First of all, we do retain the Wi-Fi credentials on some onboard firmware that we have on the controller. So what that means, and in addition to those Wi-Fi credentials, we actually retain the last schedule created too. So in theory, the controller could be disconnected from Wi-Fi for a couple months, and we would continue applying water to the yard with the schedule created. Having said that, we would lose some of that kind of real-time weather intelligence that tells us if it's going to rain or something of that nature. And since we do retain those Wi-Fi credentials, once Wi-Fi comes back online, we will automatically reconnect to that. So there are some redundancies in place that prevent anything catastrophic from happening to the yard. Now, with respect to weather stations, we actually leverage two different networks. The first one is called AERIS, A-E-R-I-S, and it is comprised primarily of federally registered weather stations, which would be those that you'd see at airports. In addition to those stations, we actually leverage a network called PWS Weather as well, and that is comprised of personal weather stations. Now, these are not all hobbyists. These could be colleges, these could be golf stations, golf course stations, anything of that nature. But what it allows us is for tens of thousands of weather stations across the United States. We do hear from people that, they live in a microclimate. We're in Denver. A lot of our business is in California. These are both areas with kind of volatile weather patterns. Weather could be different a quarter mile away from a weather station. You could be receiving an 1/8 inch of rain. It could be dry right here. Now, we actually allow for some functionality within the app that allows the homeowner to set thresholds with respect to how much rain should be seen at a weather station before a schedule will be skipped. Now, if I have a weather station that's a mile away from me and it's reporting a 1/16 inch of rain, there's a good chance that it's not watering at all at my house, and therefore I wouldn't want it to want my schedule to skip. Now, if that station is reporting an inch of rain to a mile away, pretty good chance it's raining enough at my house that I can justify skipping a schedule. So we allow the homeowner to actually adjust that threshold so that there is that safety margin with respect to when schedules are skipped. And then finally, we do allow for rain sensors to be attached to the controller. Having said that, we haven't really seen those as a necessary component given our EPA and SWAT certifications without any ancillary devices.
All right, great. We had a couple people ask about the weather data, and it sounds like you covered that pretty thoroughly. So another question, how can we find out more information on the research that is being done around rebate alternatives, and what is the most effective for the uptake of these devices?
So could you repeat the latter half of that question? I'm sorry, Liam, I missed it.
Yeah, I'll just repeat the whole thing. How can we find out more information on the research that is being done around rebate alternatives, and what is the most effective for the uptake of these devices?
Yeah, so I think we're trying to figure that out right now. If you would like more information on these alternatives, I'd suggest you reach out to us directly. We'll have contact information on this slide, and these will go out. But what we're finding is that there are means of just kind of making that rebate application process a lot more efficient. Right now, kind of a typical process is that I buy a controller. Let's say I print off a form from my agency. I fill out that form. I submit it to my agency, and it could be anywhere from a month to 6 months that I get a rebate back from that controller. What we've worked with a lot of our partners on is developing a process whereby the homeowner can go to a website. They can enter in their account number. We can instantly validate their eligibility for any given rebate program, and we can do that based on their historical water use even. And then we can usher them through a process where they could buy the controller net of that subsidy or net of that rebate amount. And in doing so, they even have the option to get a professional installation, an audit, or something of that nature. So there's a few of those different kind of approaches that we've developed with Stanford and with some groups in Southern California and Texas and Colorado, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions about those if you reach out to us.
All right, great. Is there an additional charge to use the different types of weather stations?
Is that for Rainbird or Rachio or?
It doesn't specify.
So for Rachio, we don't charge any fees. We have no recurring service model currently within our software or hardware.
Luke, you want to add to that?
Yeah, on the Rainbird side, it's internet-based on zip code, so there's no fee associated with that as well. I'm speaking for the smaller little Wi-Fi one that we have. We have physical weather stations, and then what we call global weather or internet-based data for our IQ platform, which is the commercial platform. So obviously the physical stations can be purchased. We love to sell them, but not everybody has that kind of funding. So the virtual IQ global weather is included in the software.
All right. That is actually all the questions that we have right now.
Okay, well, thank you very much, our speakers, for this webinar, and thank you all to the participants for joining us. We will be back in touch with materials from the webinar soon, and if you have any questions that you would like us to follow up on, again, feel free to email us, and we'll make sure we get you the answer that you need. But thank you very much, Luke, Brian, and Clay, for being part of our webinar today and for sharing your information and new technologies on using the cloud for irrigation efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.